Okay guys, bunkers. How's everyone's bunker play? Well, hopefully by the end of this we'll give you a bit more confidence and you won't be so worried when you go into them, because this I actually feel is, once you get the setup and the technique going, the basic fundamentals, it's actually a little bit easier than particularly the pitching, which is probably the most difficult skill we've done today. So bunkers, I mean the goal, really the number one goal is to get this thing out and just get it on the green. So let that be the first goal, and just understanding how we're going to get it out. Firstly, what club we're going to use. We need most times the most lofted club, particularly the players that sort of play around here with big lips. You need to get that thing high, landing soft. So here I've got my 58-degree wedge. Just knowing as well out of the bunkers that we're not actually trying to hit the ball out of the greenside bunkers. So we're just trying to hit like a little box out of the sand, and that ball is going to come out on a little puff of sand like that, so we don't actually make contact with the ball. So to help get it out as well, and how we're going to use the club, Michael spoke earlier about the bounce on the club, and we need to use that in the bunkers. For most sort of fluffy bunkers like this, most bunkers using the bounce, and again that's the difference between the leading edge and the trailing edge of that golf club. So that's your friend, and in the bunkers you actually want that trailing edge or the bounce or the rear sole of that club to be getting into the sand first. The reason is to stop that club digging. So if you can imagine, if I'm getting the leading edge to come in first out of the bunkers, you're going to get oftentimes those sort of shots, get very sort of draggy, get very knifey into the sand, and we need that club to be going under the ball and bouncing back out the other side. So to do that, we need to expose the bounce. So as you'll see in the technique in a moment, that'll get us then, if you're using the bounce more, the club will ripple. So you see the difference there with those two divots? You've got a ripple versus that sort of digginess. So that's what you're looking for out of the bunkers. So in terms of technique, I'll go through some of the fundamentals with setup and then go through some more advanced feels for the more advanced players, and then you can just explore this yourself. But just remembering the goal is to get the ball out. Later on I'll talk about distance controls, how to hit some longer or shorter bunker shots as well. Well, this first one here is your basic setup. So let's say I'm just going somewhere in between those trees there. I like to draw a little bit of a station. Now, of course, you can't do this when you're out playing. You can't be drawing lines. I better just make, yeah. This is why I get up and down from everywhere. So, and just to note as well, you're not actually allowed to ground your club either. So that will actually incur a penalty if you rest your club on the sand. It's almost, because the bunker's a hazard, you're not allowed to rest it there. You've got to hover it before you hit it. So this little setup's great. So you can draw a couple of lines here. You've got a little box there, another line just here, and I'll explain what these are in a moment. So that first line where the ball is, that's your ball to target line. So that's aiming pretty much where I want the ball to go. This second line here is pretty much where your feet and your body's going to line up to, pretty much parallel to that. Now I like to go a bit more parallel rather than going too open. I'll mention the reason why later on. And this third line is your ball position. So the ball here is positioned just inside my left heel or my lead heel. And now with the setup, I'm going to go really wide. So this is a thing that I see with a lot of players, that you need to get a bit wider than you think. So we want to get wider stance, we want to get low. So to get this thing high, we want to get low, so nice and wide. And this lead foot, a good idea to just flare that out a little bit, about 60 degrees or so. And by doing that, it allows you to get your weight forward. So we actually want our weight more towards this lead foot. So you're almost tracking your knee over your front toe. Nice and wide with the stance, almost like I'm riding a horse type feel. So you're really, really low as you can sort of comfortably get. And then with your setup, we mentioned about using the bounce more. So the simplest way to do that, and again, it depends what wedge and what club you've got, but it's just by opening up that club face a little bit. So that leading edge, just opening up a little bit there, then taking your grip. So you've already exposed that bounce. So when you're setting up, it looks now like you're aiming right. And what's going to counteract that now is by getting my hands lower. So if we're low, that's actually going to get the launch of the ball, because yes, that's currently aiming right, but if I put my hands lower, it's actually going to bring the launch of the ball back towards me. So nice and low with our body, weight forward, club face open, hands nice and low. And then from here, the real idea is just to be getting yourself hitting that box out of the sand. So I'd say about 1 to 2 inches behind the ball is a good gauge. Now we need lots of speed for this because we're going through some sand. You need more speed than you think, and hopefully that ball is just going to come out that nice tufted sand. And a big one here is to focus. I know a lot of players will actually focus on the ball itself. One of the biggest tips I could give you is focus on where you want the club to enter the sand. That's really what you're focusing on, and the rest will just do its job for you. You don't really want to be focusing so much there, and then you actually hit the ball and then you get those thin ones where you knife it through and it stays in the bunker. Yep. So you really want to focus on that spot there. So once you've got your setup, there we go, weights forward, nice wide stance, nice and low. Also get the feet nice and dug in, unstable sand, so you want to create stability. So get your feet, you're allowed to do that. Get yourself settled in there, hands nice and low. And then from here, you're really just going to keep that weight forward. And in the swing, you don't want to be moving off too much. Keep pretty centered over it. Nice sort of half swing, and then lots of speed, lots of acceleration through the ball, and that thing should just come out with a nice tuft of sand there. And you can see that nice ripple. I've just knocked that box out of the sand. So that's something, that's the basic sort of setup there. What to look out for is not try and help that thing out of the sand, because if you start to fall back and then try and help it up, oftentimes you'll hit too far behind, and then you can get that sort of shot where it might thin, go into the bank again and not quite get out. So keeping that weight forward, focusing on the spot where you want to actually hit into the sand, and then you can just be committed and through. And you hear that sort of, how the bounce of the club's just smacking through the sand, so it's not getting diggy. You hear this different sound of the dig, that versus that kind of, that bounciness. So that's what you're looking for out of there. Any questions so far on the basic setup? Well, this is a lot of years as a junior, just experimenting, just playing around. But once you understand how the clubs are designed and what you're actually trying to do, you can start to just tweak a few things. So during this session, the next couple of stations, the guys are going to go through some sort of distance control and plugged lies as well, which Matt's going to do just over there. Before I mention the plugged lies, distance control. So first thing is to get that thing out of the sand, absolutely, goal number one. But then once you're feeling comfortable with that and you want to play to a further pin or one that's just on the edge, what would you guys do currently? What would you change? Any shout outs? Just get it out. Yeah.
You can go, I'll vary. I find pressure shot, like just having it as quite closed. If I've got to flop it to the first tree, I think you've got no choice but to open it up. But I find that open it up a harder shot. Often your margin for error when you open the club, it feels like me, it goes up. Like, so my standard would be 60-degree close to where you are there.
Yeah, awesome.
And then open it up for the flop, and then further would be a 56.
Brilliant. That's great there. You said about change of club as well. You can change your club. So if you've got a longer one, you could go, I've got my 58 here, I could maybe go for my 54, same technique, and it'll go that bit further, run out a little bit more. But if you're using the exact same club, a simple guide that you guys can explore is this. So once you've got your normal setup, we're trying to hit the box, do all that. So you've got the setup the same. Now you could go, okay, if you're playing the medium shot, then sort of mid-length like I've just played, think of your leading edge of the club, try and get that aiming at your center of your foot. So kind of in the middle there. So that shot with the same sort of swing should give me X distance. That's ones I've just been hitting before. Now if I want to hit it further, well in fact I'll do the shorter one first. So let's say
I think that's the hardest shot for me.
Yeah, the closer one. Yeah. So let's say this is just over the edge of this lip towards it. Yeah, towards those leaves there. Same setup again, but all I do now is open that up a bit more. And now that leading edge is aiming more towards my toe. So I've increased.
Ball position you've moved to your toe, have you?
Ball position is the same. Yep, yep.
inside your heel.
I've just increased the loft.
Just opens it.
And what you can do as well, you can get yourself a little bit lower, but just be mindful of your lie for this, because again, just like the other shots we've played, if you open the club face up, the more you do, the more it raises that leading edge. So if you're going to do that, you need a good lie, fluffyish lie out of the sand. If it's pretty compact or if it's really sort of wet, then I wouldn't recommend that, because you might then end up hitting the ball on the equator. It might bounce and skip up and there's not enough sand to get under. But if it's sat quite nicely and you're feeling lucky and you want to just get that thing a bit high, a bit more cute, then same sort of setup. And there, so that's come out a bit higher, a bit softer. And if you're doing a longer one, then using that same reference point, but this time I'm going to get my leading edge of the club aiming towards my heel. So now this is going to come out a little bit lower, same sort of setup. So this should go just that little bit further. So that's 3 different distances just by altering my setup.
That's very skillful.
That's a lot of time in the bunker, yeah. So it's a lot of teaching and clinics.
Danny, like a couple of our bunkers here are like cement.
Yeah.
What do you do there? When the sand is that hard, I can think of one already on the port. That,
I can go through that with the plug as well.
Do you want to go through that? Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to go through plug lights separately? Beautiful. Great. Brilliant. So any questions on any other the fundamentals?
All sounds very good. Is there one thing that we really should think about? You know how sometimes you just think,
When you
okay,
get in a bunker,
think right, what?
If there's one tip I would get you, just smack it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speed.
That's what we try and
Speed.
do. Accelerate.
Yeah.
from bunker to bunker to bunker.
Bro.
Cool. Okay, so different stations are going to